From the outside, Hawthorne Circle looked like an American dream come to life. A curving street encompassed 30 or so tidy homes, each with well-manicured lawns, pastel siding, and symmetrical flower beds. A few shady oaks dotted the sidewalks, offering respite on hot afternoons. In spring, bright tulips lined the walkway in front of each house. Garage doors matched the shingles, and mailboxes bore identical designs required by the local homeowners association, HOA. Most neighbors got along politely, if not warmly, exchanging nods while watering plants or rolling out trash bins on collection day. Rarely did loud arguments or flamboyant displays disrupt the suburban calm. The overarching sense was, follow the HOA rules, keep your yard neat, and life will remain harmonious. But as in many such communities, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Adhering to the HOA's countless bylaws required constant vigilance. The color of your fence, the placement of holiday decor, even the height of your grass. And perhaps none took these rules more seriously than the formidable HOA board member, Cassandra Browning. The woman neighbors privately joked was a quintessential Karen. She was in her mid-50s, kept her hair in a meticulously styled bob, and wore a perpetual expression of faint disapproval. Though outwardly polite, she enforced bylaws with an iron fist, sending violation notices for the smallest infractions. For a time, life along Hawthorne Circle remained predictable, yet everything would soon pivot around a simple, heartwarming activity: children in wheelchairs gathering for a friendly race each weekend. Their playful event captured the hearts of many, just not Cassandra's. Her hostility toward them would bring the entire block to an unexpected confrontation, culminating in traffic cones, blocked driveways, and the unstoppable determination of children who refused to be denied their joy. The roots of the wheelchair racing tradition sprouted from friendship. Tara Lee, a bright 13-year-old with spinal muscular atrophy, had recently moved to Hawthorne Circle with her parents. She used a motorized wheelchair that gave her independence. In exploring her new neighborhood, she encountered Zach Tyler, age 12, who had lost mobility in his legs after a car accident years prior. He too used a wheelchair, though his was mostly manual with occasional electric assist. They quickly bonded over their shared reality, navigating sidewalks, curb ramps, and the occasional well-meaning but patronizing neighbor. Tara had a wry sense of humor. Zach was more introspective. They found that goofing around in their chairs, racing short distances, practicing tight turns, was not only fun but a celebration of their unique mobility. Soon, other kids joined in. Not all were wheelchair users. Claire Sampson, who had a mild cerebral palsy diagnosis, sometimes rolled in a pediatric walker but also liked to sit in a borrowed wheelchair during the weekend race to keep pace with her friends. A few able-bodied siblings and friends got creative, borrowing kiddie scooters or rolling on skateboards, so as not to outpace the chairs. All of them recognized that the event was about camaraderie, not formal competition. They typically congregated on Sunday afternoons when traffic was low. Adults would watch from their lawns, sipping iced tea, while the kids formed a starting line near the end of Hawthorne Circle. They'd set an informal finish line about 100 yards down, marked by chalk or balloons. Laughter and cheers filled the air as the kids zoomed or rolled at their top speeds. Neighbors found it heartwarming, a testament to inclusivity, resilience, and the simple joys of childhood. Yet from her living room window, Cassandra Browning observed with growing disapproval. She bristled at the squeals echoing through the street, considered the chalk lines graffiti, and secretly fumed that these non-conforming activities were happening on what she viewed as her block. Cassandra's devotion to HOA rules bordered on obsession. She meticulously mowed her lawn twice a week, ensuring it matched the regulation height of 3 inches. She stored her trash bins in a concealed enclosure to avoid an untidy appearance. She glared at those who left children's toys in driveways, wrote strongly worded emails to the board whenever someone's holiday light stayed up past the recommended removal date, and lectured new families on the proper color scheme for porch furniture. Though outwardly polite, Cassandra's veneer masked arrogance. She believed her vision of order was superior, and that any deviation from the standard threatened property values. The wheelchair races, while not obviously codified in any bylaw, struck her as unsightly. Kids might scratch the pavement with their wheelchairs. They might create a public nuisance. She convinced herself it was her duty to quell the chaos. In private, neighbors referred to her as Karen. She had that uncanny knack for calling the police over trivial matters: a parked car an inch over someone's driveway, a dog barking once too often at midday. Most recognized she was searching for conflict. However, they never suspected she would take it to the level of hostility that soon unfolded. Cassandra started by raising the matter at an HOA meeting. "We have these wheelchair gatherings," she said in a clipped tone. "They block the street. It's potentially dangerous, and the chalk lines are defacing communal property." A few members exchanged confused looks. Hardly anyone considered children playing out front to be a hazard. The HOA president, Brenda Martin, politely responded, "Cassandra, so far no one has complained. The kids are supervised, and they're not truly blocking the street." Cassandra clenched her jaw. That evening, she left unsatisfied, vowing to find a stronger argument for shutting down the races. As the weeks passed, the Sunday wheelchair races became an anticipated event in Hawthorne Circle. Parents brought out lawn chairs, older couples ambled over to watch, and supportive neighbors even prepared small refreshments, cheering every child crossing the chalk finish line. The kids themselves thrived on the positivity. Some started decorating their wheelchairs with stickers or little flags. They gave themselves nicknames. Zach was the Speedy Z, Tara was Turbo T, and Claire was the Flashing Walker. Even those outside the wheelchair circle joined wholeheartedly. Able-bodied kids would stand on the sidelines, clapping and chanting. Siblings chalked silly art on the road's edges, drawing huge cartoonish track lines or motivational words like "Zoom" or "Go, go, go." A father set up a bubble machine near the finish line, and children squealed with glee as they rolled through floating bubbles. This small tradition symbolized inclusivity that was rarely so visible in suburban neighborhoods. Word spread that Hawthorne Circle was exceptionally friendly to kids with mobility devices. Meanwhile, Cassandra seethed, feeling overshadowed by the carnival-like atmosphere. She believed the block was descending into a disruptive spectacle that undercut the quiet dignity of the area. She typed out a letter titled "Concerns about Sunday Street Usage" and circulated it among some neighbors, hoping to sway them with talk of liability and potential injuries. Most either ignored or politely refused to sign. Thwarted again, Cassandra channeled her frustration into scouring the HOA bylaws for anything to justify her disapproval. She tried referencing rules about no street gatherings without permission, but the board pointed out those applied to large public events, not half a dozen neighborhood kids playing. Feeling cornered, Cassandra's resentment deepened. On a breezy Sunday afternoon, with parents and kids gathering as usual, Cassandra emerged from her house, scowling. She crossed her arms, standing near the sidewalk as the children lined up at their makeshift starting line. Her glare unnerved a few onlookers, who whispered that maybe she'd try calling the police. But the kids, excited to race, paid her little mind. "On your mark, get set, go," shouted Zach's dad, tossing a friendly wave. Tara's electric chair whirred forward. Zach's manual chair spun as he pumped the rims, and Claire's walker clacked determinedly. A smattering of cheers rose. Some kids zoomed on scooters, trailing behind. The scene radiated cheerfulness, except from Cassandra, who seemed on the verge of an outburst. As the racers approached the finish line, chalked near a storm drain, Cassandra abruptly stepped forward, waving her hands. "Stop! You're obstructing the roadway. This is unacceptable. Someone will get hurt." The kids hesitated, while squeaking. Tara furrowed her brow, unsure how to respond. Parents stepped in, pointing out that no cars were coming. The street was calm. Annoyed at being ignored, Cassandra tried to grab the back of Zach's chair as he passed, but he deftly swerved away. She let out a huff. Adults confronted her, insisting she keep her hands off the children. She retreated with a glare and stomped back to her porch. The race continued, somewhat rattled but ultimately unbroken. That was the first time Cassandra's hostility crossed a physical boundary, though not as overt as what was to come. Parents took note, cautioning each other to watch out for Cassandra's interference. Cassandra's frustration escalated behind closed doors. She felt the entire neighborhood was against her, that children in wheelchairs had become a spectacle no one would question. She believed it tarnished the refined image of Hawthorne Circle. In her twisted logic, she convinced herself these kids posed a hazard to themselves, and she must protect them from their unsafe racing. In truth, she just hated feeling powerless. A few nights later, Cassandra rummaged through her garage, searching for items that might forcibly deter the kids. She considered placing tacks or nails on the street, then realized how severe that would be, possibly flattening car tires, too. She debated calling the city or county, but local authorities likely wouldn't do more than politely check. So she settled on a simpler, more direct form of intimidation: small rocks or gravel to pelt near the kids if they approached her area of the street. It wasn't as extreme as nails, she rationalized, but enough to disrupt their races. In her mind, if they saw gravel scattering around them, they might be spooked into quitting. That was her aim. She told herself she wouldn't directly harm them, merely remind them that the street was no place for racing. She set aside a bucket of smooth landscaping stones, clenching her fists as she imagined the commotion it would cause. Though part of her recognized the moral wrongdoing, her anger and obsessive desire for control overrode any sense of compassion. She believed that, as a homeowner and HOA enforcer, she had every right to sabotage an activity she perceived as defiant. The next Sunday's race would be the stage for her most shocking act yet. The next Sunday dawned bright, with the typical flurry of excitement. Parents placed lawn chairs on driveways. Kids laughed as they decorated their chairs with colorful ribbons. Claire tested a new neon green walker strap. Zach boasted about practicing sharp cornering. Tara teased him that her motor could outpace him any day. Everyone seemed relaxed, oblivious to Cassandra's hidden plan. Cassandra stood on her porch, bucket of stones at her feet, waiting. She wore sunglasses, arms crossed. The children rolled into position at the far end of the circle, while an adult volunteer set a cone near the finish line. A hush of anticipation fell. Then, with a cheer, they started rolling. As the little procession advanced down the street, Cassandra grabbed a handful of stones. She waited until they were nearly passing her house. Kids maybe a dozen feet away, then flung the stones in a quick arc. They pitter-pattered onto the asphalt near the children, scattering across the path. A few even struck the rims of Zach's chair. The kids gasped, wheels jerking in surprise. Parents jolted to their feet, outraged. Tara's father shouted, "Hey, what the?" The children slowed, uncertain if more stones would come. Cassandra, in a fury, tossed another handful, though this time her aim was wilder. One stone ricocheted off Claire's walker, startling her. She stumbled, nearly tipping sideways. Gaining composure, she looked up, eyes tearing, baffled that an adult would stoop so low. In seconds, the parents converged. Michael Tyler, Zach's dad, sprinted forward, yelling at Cassandra to stop. Other neighbors grabbed the kids, ushering them away. Cassandra, face twisted with anger, shrieked, "You can't race here. This is a road, not a playground. You're going to get hurt, or cause an accident." Her voice quavered with a mix of rage and bizarre justification. "You're the one hurting them." A mother yelled back, trembling with fury. Another father demanded, "We'll call the police if you keep this up." Cassandra snapped the bucket handle, retreating behind her porch railing, but she was unrepentant. "Do it," she spat. "This nonsense ends now." The children, shaken and tearful, retreated to their driveways. The race halted. A strange hush blanketed Hawthorne Circle. Never had the tension soared so high, nor had the children's innocence been so violently interrupted. For the first time, the wheelchair race ended abruptly, overshadowed by fear and confusion. Children scattered back to their homes. Some cried in anger or shock. Parents were livid, cursing Cassandra's name. A few neighbors dialed the non-emergency police line, describing the assault. Officers arrived, took statements, and knocked on Cassandra's door. She refused to let them in, but eventually stepped outside. A heated exchange ensued. Cassandra insisted she only threw stones near the children, not directly at them. The officers pointed out that her actions constituted harassment or even assault if a child was struck. Parents demanded charges. Yet the situation wasn't cut and dry. No child had a significant physical injury. The stones were small, and Cassandra claimed it was a warning to protect them. The officers concluded they couldn't make an immediate arrest without clearer evidence of intent or injury. They wrote a report, told Cassandra to cease all hostile actions, and left amid simmering anger from the families. The entire block found the outcome deeply unsatisfying. Cassandra had effectively threatened kids with no immediate legal repercussion. The children felt traumatized. The parents realized that continuing the races in front of Cassandra's house might lead to more aggression. Some suggested shifting the race to a different street, but that was complicated. Hawthorne Circle had the widest, safest sidewalks and the least through traffic. Discussions sparked among neighbors. How to protect the kids from Cassandra's vendetta? They refused to let her sabotage a beloved weekend tradition. Perhaps they could physically block her involvement, but how, exactly? The seeds of a plan began forming in a few parents' minds, a plan as unconventional as Cassandra's stony assault. If she wanted to pelt them from her driveway, maybe they'd make sure she couldn't come near the race at all. A few days after the rock incident, a group of concerned parents gathered in Zach's family living room to brainstorm. This included Zach's parents, Michael and Serena, Tara's parents, John and May Lee, Claire's mom, Danielle, plus a couple of other supportive neighbors. The mood was tense, but resolute. They enumerated options: press charges, file official HOA complaints, relocate the race, or attempt direct negotiation with Cassandra. None seemed promising. The police offered no immediate solution. The HOA was notoriously slow, and Cassandra, ironically, was on the board. Negotiation sounded futile, given her blatant hostility. Relocation felt unfair. Why yield to a bully? Finally, an idea emerged from Serena. "We can block her driveway with cones," she said quietly, half expecting laughter. But the others perked up. "If we place traffic cones or reflective barricades around the perimeter, she can't physically reach the kids. We keep the race route exactly where it is, but form a boundary that prevents her from stepping into it." John added, "Yes, kind of like a track lane that diverts around her property. We could set the cones so the children pass safely in front of or behind it, leaving a big circle of no man's land around her driveway." Danielle clapped her hands in excitement. "That might work. The kids remain on the public street. We're not obstructing traffic, and we use bright signage. It's basically a safe zone. She can't cross that line without stepping over official cones, which is more blatant than just walking out with rocks." They realized that, ironically, Cassandra often used the HOA's official supply of traffic cones for block parties or repair zones. The board kept them in a shared storage shed. They decided to request use of the cones under the premise of child safety for a block activity. If refused, they had enough neighbors who owned or could borrow cones from local contractors. The concept was both comedic and cunning, walling off Cassandra from the kids. They loved it. Approaching the HOA about traffic cones was tricky. The parents wanted a blessing from the board to avoid any technical violation. They also knew Cassandra was on that board. However, the board had a rotating chair system, and the current president, Brenda Martin, was more moderate. Zach's father, Michael Tyler, requested a meeting with Brenda. He explained that, due to a safety concern with the children's wheelchair activity, they wanted to place cones on the street's edge to ensure cars slowed down and to keep a buffer zone near Cassandra's driveway. Brenda, though aware of friction, didn't delve into details. She recognized that the children's weekly event had become integral to Hawthorne Circle's spirit. "A few cones for safety is no big deal," she said. "The HOA can't formally sponsor it, but we also won't forbid it, as long as you're not blocking anyone's rightful access." Michael nodded, saying, "We'll keep the cones on the public curb, ensuring that Ms. Browning can still get in and out, just with caution." He left out the part about the safe zone encircling her driveway. Brenda gave a verbal okay. Officially, the board wasn't endorsing, but they also wouldn't stand in the way. That was enough. The parents soon borrowed a stack of bright orange cones from the neighborhood storage, slyly ignoring any potential protest from Cassandra. Meanwhile, Cassandra was none the wiser. She had retreated into a sullen mood after the police visit. She hoped her rock-throwing outburst had quashed the wheelchair races for good. Instead, behind the scenes, the parents were orchestrating an even bigger demonstration of defiance. That weekend, the parents rose early. They arranged the cones along the street in a large oval shape that extended from the usual starting point down toward Cassandra's property, circled widely around her driveway, then rejoined the other side of the street. This lane effectively gave the kids a clear path that never came within arm's length of Cassandra's porch or yard. They also posted small signs reading "Wheelchair-Friendly Zone" and "Slow Kids at Play." Another sign read, ironically, Area under observation, no trespassing, pointed inward toward Cassandra's driveway. The idea was comedic. She'd have to cross a boundary of cones to sabotage them again, making her aggression even more blatant. Neighbors who saw the setup found it clever. Some giggled at the bright signage, predicting Cassandra's explosion of anger. Others admired the ingenuity. No rules were broken. The cones lay on public asphalt, leaving enough space for cars to pass. Hawthorne Circle's geometry favored this layout, as it was a low-traffic loop with a single entrance. Anyone driving in or out could easily navigate around the cones, which were spaced so vehicles could pass. The only inconvenience was for Cassandra, whose driveway was partially enclosed by the ring of cones. She could still leave, but she'd have to maneuver around them carefully. As the children gathered for the Sunday race, an air of excitement crackled. They saw the fresh track lines, the cones forming a protective barrier. "Wow!" Tara exclaimed. "It looks like a real race course." Zach grinned widely. Even Claire, who sometimes felt self-conscious, lit up seeing the supportive environment. Parents nodded, offering confident smiles. They were done letting Cassandra intimidate them. They'd create a safer zone for their kids, come what may. When Cassandra opened her curtains that Sunday morning, her jaw dropped at the scene of bright orange cones near her driveway. The children were already lining up, some parents adjusting the final details. She stormed out onto her porch, wearing slippers and a robe, livid. "What is this?" she shouted. "You can't block my driveway. This is illegal." Michael Tyler calmly replied, "We're not blocking it, Cassandra. The cones mark a safe zone for the kids. You can still exit your driveway. Just be cautious. We have the HOA's acknowledgement that we can place cones for child safety." Her face reddened. She marched toward the cones. "Move them right now. I'm calling the police. You can't trap me in my own house." A father pointed out a wide gap left for her car. Indeed, the ring of cones left just enough space for a careful exit, akin to a single-lane break. She fumed, realizing they'd outsmarted her. She then tried kicking one cone aside, but it immediately drew scolding from onlookers. "Ma'am, that's for kids' safety," a mother said firmly. The children, noticing Cassandra's meltdown, remained back at the starting line, uncertain whether to proceed. The parents waved them on, reassuring them that the cones would keep them safe. Cassandra glared, stepped aside, and sneered. "Go ahead, you brats. Race all you want. You'll see how worthless this is." Undeterred, the kids lined up. "On your mark, get set, go," Serena Tyler announced. The wheelchairs and walkers moved forward, squeaking in unison, ribbons fluttering in the breeze. They followed the coned path, a bright arc that skillfully avoided Cassandra's reach. She could only stand on her curb, arms folded, bitterness radiating off her. If she dared cross the cones to throw something, it would be a blatant, illegal act. The parents watched vigilantly, phones ready to record any transgression. The kids beamed. For the first time since the rock attack, they felt safer. Neighbors cheered, clapping as each child found new confidence in the extended track. It was an undeniable victory for the families, proving that a little creativity could thwart Karen's aggression without stooping to her level. With the success of the coned-off track, more children grew curious. A few new wheelchair-using kids from other blocks came by, invited by their friends. Soon, the Sunday event had a bigger turnout. Even some older kids joined with bikes or scooters, carefully sharing the route. The parents enforced a respectful wheel-first rule, ensuring the wheelchair users had priority and no one overshadowed them. It remained a gentle, playful environment, more about companionship than actual competition. Onlookers brought lawn chairs and snacks, turning the event into a mini-block party. Some even brought an umbrella or two in case of strong sun, shading those who wanted to watch. The mood soared. Even families without kids found it delightful to see the block so lively. Occasionally, a passing car slowed, perplexed by the cones, but the drivers typically smiled once they spotted the kids in wheelchairs racing. The entire spectacle radiated positivity. Cassandra seethed from her porch. She sometimes came outside to hurl insults or threatened to call the HOA or the police. Yet the parents remained calm, politely reminding her to watch her step around the cones. They'd wave cheerfully in her direction, making her even more furious. She made calls to the HOA, complaining about unlawful closure of the road. But the board reminded her that partial use of cones for child safety was not disallowed, as long as driveways weren't fully blocked. She tried the local police again, who showed up, took a quick look, and left, concluding the children were just playing safely. Unable to sabotage physically, Cassandra felt her power slip away. She was ironically trapped behind the barrier, no longer able to disrupt the races without exposing herself to immediate legal trouble. As the kids zipped by, squealing with laughter, she realized she had become the butt of the joke. Neighbors snickered at how she was effectively fenced off from her own blockade. Despite the ongoing tension, Cassandra wasn't finished. She used her influence on the HOA board to push for an emergency meeting, labeling it a public safety hearing. She demanded that all unapproved gatherings requiring traffic cones be banned. On a Tuesday evening, the board convened at the local community center with a surprisingly large crowd. Word had spread that Cassandra was aiming to shut down the wheelchair races. Cassandra arrived with a typed list of grievances. The children blocked the street, created chalk markings, left cones in place for hours, and so forth. She singled out the harassment she endured, claiming the parents targeted her driveway to isolate her. She tried to paint herself as a victim, ignoring her rock-throwing assault. Michael Tyler stood to counter her claims. He calmly recounted how Cassandra's aggression escalated, culminating in her throwing stones at kids. He described how the cones were a necessary measure for the children's safety, ironically forced by Cassandra's hostility. Other parents chimed in about how the races had become a cherished event, fostering unity and celebrating kids with disabilities. One board member, Naomi Blair, who was typically neutral, expressed shock at Cassandra's admission, previously on record with the police, that she'd hurled stones. "That's not just a minor complaint. That's an assault on children," Naomi said. The audience murmured in agreement. Cassandra insisted she was protecting them from speeding cars, which drew audible scoffs. Another board member, Harold Kim, pointed out that they had zero record of car-related incidents, but at least 2 police complaints about Cassandra's actions. The tension rose as Cassandra realized she was outnumbered. When the motion to ban unapproved gatherings requiring traffic cones reached a vote, the board rejected it handily, 4-1. Cassandra was the lone supporter. She left the meeting in a rage, her last attempt at legal prohibition deflated. Meanwhile, the parents emerged triumphant. The HOA officially sanctioned the kids' right to gather with cones for safety. The entire block, minus Cassandra, breathed a sigh of relief. After Cassandra's defeat at the HOA meeting, the wheelchair races continued more confidently than ever. Parents no longer worried about surprise crackdowns. They added small improvements. One neighbor brought a set of plastic barriers labeled "Kids Racing. Please drive slow." Another donated small foam bumpers for the kids to affix to chair edges, preventing scraping if they got too close. The children gained new participants. Mia Sanchez, an 8-year-old with brittle bone disease, visited from a few blocks away. She'd been hesitant about joining group play, fearful of rough surfaces. But seeing the supportive environment, she found a new sense of courage. The parents adapted the race segments for her slower speed, awarding her a special, gentle star for finishing. Local media even caught wind of it. A small news blog wrote an article titled, "Neighborhood Creates Weekend Wheelchair Track. Kids Thrive Despite Opposition." The piece highlighted how the families overcame an unnamed neighbor's hostility, referencing the stone-throwing incident. The coverage brought positive attention, painting Hawthorne Circle as a place championing inclusion. Cassandra's negative stance was overshadowed by a wave of community praise. In her house, Cassandra felt more isolated than ever. Some neighbors refused to greet her. She noticed whispers, side glances, and fewer invitations to block gatherings. Her meltdown had effectively exiled her socially. Yet her pride kept her from apologizing or stepping back. She vowed that if the parents thought she was done, they were mistaken. Desperate, Cassandra conjured another plan. She reasoned that if she couldn't break the kids' spirits directly, maybe she could create a fuss with local authorities about unlawful blocking of her driveway. She claimed the cones restricted her property rights. This time, she prepared a letter to the city's code enforcement office, including photos of the cones near her driveway. She omitted that they left a wide gap for her to exit, hoping to paint a misleading picture. A week later, a city code officer visited, examining the site. The parents politely explained the truth. The cones sat on public roadway, not on her private property. The code officer measured distances, verifying a clear path. He concluded no violation existed. Cassandra's scheme fizzled. Furious, she confronted the officer, accusing him of bias. He gave her a dispassionate shrug and left, unconvinced. Next, Cassandra tried to scatter broken glass near the edge of her driveway, hoping wheelchair tires might be punctured. But a neighbor spotted the shards, alerted the parents, and they swept it up before any child got hurt. Another neighbor's security camera captured Cassandra sprinkling something suspicious at dawn, though not clearly enough to press charges. Parents circulated the footage, outraged that she attempted stealth sabotage yet again. The children remained largely unaware of these behind-the-scenes threats, happily gathering each Sunday. Their innocence and bravery fueled the parents' resolve. If Cassandra stooped so low as to fling glass shards, they'd watch even more closely. People started rotating guard duty, ensuring no new hazards appeared on the track. In many ways, Cassandra's persistent malice only galvanized the block's unity. In a twist of fate, the local chapter of a disability advocacy organization learned about the wheelchair races and the parents' efforts to secure a safe environment. Moved by the story, they reached out to Michael Tyler, offering assistance in the form of high-visibility reflective gear, caution tape, and even modest funds to print official wheelchair race zone signs. They believe this small event exemplified empowerment for kids with disabilities and wanted to support it. The group's spokesperson, Eva Morales, visited Hawthorne Circle, speaking with the children and parents. She was delighted by the track's sense of freedom. "We wish more neighborhoods would create safe spaces like this," she said. "It's a testament to real inclusion. We'd love to help formalize it so that no malicious neighbor can tear it down." Marveled by the gesture, the parents accepted reflective vests and portable, slow mobility devices at play signs. On Sunday, the kids wore bright vests to be extra visible, and the parents placed official-looking signage around the cone track. It practically resembled a sanctioned sporting event, though it remained all about fun, not competition. Photos posted on social media garnered praise, with many calling it an inspiring example of how a neighborhood can adapt to children's unique needs. Cassandra watched from her porch in disgust. The track now had an aura of official legitimacy, like a recognized city program. She felt overshadowed, powerless to dismantle it. Her bitterness reached a new peak, but she couldn't find a flaw in the setup. The track was legal, safe, and wholeheartedly embraced by residents. She was well and truly cornered. In a final act of desperation, Cassandra tried to forcibly remove the cones one Sunday morning before the children arrived. She marched out with a broomstick, shoving cones aside, hoping to scatter them. However, a group of parents spotted her from across the street. They raced over, recording her with their phones. A heated argument ensued. Cassandra insisted the cones were on her property, though they clearly sat on the public curb. She demanded the parents stop filming. They refused. "This is public space," retorted Danielle, Claire's mom. "We have every right to record you vandalizing our child's safety setup." Seeing she was outnumbered, Cassandra fled back into her house. The parents replaced the cones, restoring the track. By the time the kids arrived, it was as if nothing had happened, aside from a sense of heightened vigilance. The parents circulated the video among neighbors, reinforcing the reality that Cassandra was the aggressor again. If she tried anything further, they could show the police multiple instances of her attempts to sabotage the kids. The wheelchair race commenced smoothly, children giggling as they wove around the far turn near Cassandra's house. They glimpsed her silhouette behind a drawn curtain. Some whispered jokes about the grumpy lady, but mostly they focused on the joy of rolling freely. On that day, a spirit of triumph overcame the lingering fear. They refused to let Cassandra's negativity ruin their sense of belonging. Weeks later, a gentle Sunday afternoon found the usual group assembled for the race. The kids were warming up near the starting line. Parents chatted in clusters. The sun cast golden light on the bright orange cones. Suddenly, a figure appeared from Cassandra's house. Her husband, Ronald Browning, whom few saw frequently. He was often away on business. It was rumored he quietly disapproved of Cassandra's extreme behavior, but rarely intervened. Ronald approached the parents, holding a small cooler. I wanted to bring these for the kids. Bottled waters," he said hesitantly. The group paused, startled. He added awkwardly, I know things have been tense, and I'm sorry for all that. You should know, Cassandra's been under a lot of stress, but that doesn't excuse what she did. Michael Tyler, though wary, nodded politely. Appreciate the gesture, Mr. Browning. But if your wife still resents our kids, I'm not sure what to say. Ronald sighed, glancing at the windows of his house. She's, well, quite upset, but I think it's gone too far. I can't control her, but I hope we can keep the peace. I'm sorry about the stones, truly. He placed the cooler near the curb, uncertain how else to proceed. A few parents thanked him, though they remained cautious. Clearly, Ronald was attempting to mend fences in his own quiet way. No one had illusions that Cassandra was about to apologize. But Ronald's act suggested that perhaps not even her household supported her vendetta. The kids accepted the water bottles gratefully, offering shy smiles. The day's race went on, unaffected by any new drama. While the neighbors appreciated Ronald's small olive branch, they knew Cassandra likely fumed inside, possibly enraged that her husband had taken a conciliatory step. Yet the status quo seemed to hold. The cone track remained, the children raced safely, and Cassandra stayed indoors. Peace, albeit tense, settled over Hawthorne Circle. As summer turned to fall, the families decided to hold a wheelchair race finale block party, an all-day event celebrating the children's achievements. The plan was to expand beyond just the race. Add a short obstacle course, a potluck, a small bouncy house for siblings, and an awards ceremony for each child who participated over the months. They sought HOA approval to close off a larger section of the street for a single day, which Brenda Martin gladly granted. Even the city provided a simple permit for a partial street closure, ensuring no cars interrupted. News spread quickly, and nearly every home on Hawthorne Circle joined in. They strung up banners reading, Rolling Strong, and All Wheels Welcome. The kids practiced special routines. Zach tried a slalom pattern around cones, while Tara planned a demonstration of advanced wheelchair maneuvers. Claire aimed to push her walker faster than ever, aided by supportive cheers. On the big day, the street buzzed with excitement. Folding tables displayed homemade dishes, from casseroles to cookies. Music played softly. The kids wore matching t-shirts with a wheelchair graphic. A few local sponsors donated small prizes. The parents had arranged a short ceremony at midday to honor each child's perseverance. Cassandra's house was effectively encircled by the celebrations, though not blocked from exiting. Many wondered if she'd attempt sabotage, but to everyone's surprise, she didn't appear outside at all, presumably holed up, stewing. In a sense, that was for the best. No confrontation marred the day's joy. When the racing segment began, families lined the street, cheering as each child took a turn completing a victory lap. The bright orange cones still formed the track's boundary, but now it looked more like a festive archway with balloons. The children soared down the route, smiling from ear to ear, the entire neighborhood erupting in applause. Some parents wiped tears from their eyes at the pure, unbridled happiness on display. The event ended with each child receiving a small trophy or ribbon. To Zach, the master of turns. To Tara, the speed queen. To Claire, the heart of determination. The crowd hooped and whistled. The kids beamed, prouder than ever. Cassandra's meltdown, ironically, had only fueled the neighborhood's resolve to celebrate these children's accomplishments. After the block party, a calmer routine settled in. The children continued to meet on Sundays, though the cooler fall weather shortened their sessions. The threat from Cassandra felt distant now. She still scowled from her window occasionally, but the memory of her stone throwing was overshadowed by months of determined neighborly unity. The cone track had become a standard fixture. Parents set it up, the kids raced, then packed it away. Legally, Cassandra faced no direct charges for the stone incident, though the police record remained on file. In the HOA, her influence waned drastically. Some called for her resignation, but the board's process required a vote at the next election cycle, still months away. Meanwhile, neighbors kept their distance, acknowledging her presence with cold politeness if forced to interact. For the kids, the races had become more than just a weekend hobby. They discovered a supportive community that valued their abilities, forging friendships that transcended the usual divides. They learned that prejudice, like Cassandra's, could be countered by collective kindness and creative thinking. Their wheelchairs, once symbols of limitation, now represented freedom and camaraderie. Parents often reminisced about the day they barricaded Cassandra's driveway. Though it sounded petty on the surface, it had been a peaceful, somewhat humorous tactic to protect the children. If Cassandra had chosen to be civil from the start, they could have collaborated on safety measures. Instead, her aggression spurred them to unify beyond what anyone anticipated. The entire story hinted that adversity, when faced with compassion, can spark lasting bonds. Time marched on in Hawthorne Circle. Season by season, the children grew older. Zach's arms got stronger from wheeling up and down the block, and he used a manual chair less frequently for everyday tasks. Tara refined her motorized skills, becoming adept at navigating tight corners. Claire advanced to a more stable walker, occasionally using the wheelchair track for practice. Mia, with brittle bones, gained confidence and a sense of belonging. The cone track system, once a symbol of defiance, evolved into a local fixture. Even families from other neighborhoods occasionally visited to partake in open track days, inspired by what they'd heard. The HOA board, aside from Cassandra, recognized the intangible value, a sense of empathy and inclusion that elevated Hawthorne Circle beyond a typical suburban street. Cassandra Browning herself remained something of a pariah. Her husband, Ronald, occasionally emerged to chat with neighbors, apologizing again for the fiasco. Over time, the block found a measure of forgiveness, though Cassandra never openly repented. She seldom left her home on race days, presumably to avoid the pang of seeing children she once tried to bully enjoying themselves so freely. In the fullness of time, the story of how Karen threw rocks at children's wheelchair races, only to find her driveway barricaded by bright orange cones, became local legend. New residents heard it and marveled at how a petty homeowner's aggression led to one of the most uplifting traditions in the region. The children who once felt targeted realized they had changed an entire neighborhood's perspective on accessibility. Even after the kids grew into teenagers with busy schedules, they never forgot the Sunday races. Sometimes they joked about it as they moved on to high school, college, or other pursuits. The memory lingered as a testament to resilience. How a simple wheelchair race, threatened by hostility, birthed a powerful statement about community care. Long after the cones were folded away for good, the spirit of their safe track endured, a permanent reminder that, with unity, neighbors can block out cruelty and pave the way for every child's unstoppable joy.